The rain was relentless that night. It wasn't just falling, it was pounding, drumming against the cracked asphalt of the highway and the lonely buildings that lined it. The storm had a way of swallowing sound, making the world feel emptier than it was. But on the corner of that forgotten road stood a diner, its neon sign buzzing faintly, flickering between open and almost dark. It was the kind of place people passed without noticing, except for the ones who had no choice but to stop. Inside, the diner was warm but wary. Red vinyl booths bore scars of years gone by. The jukebox in the corner hummed an old country song, and the fluorescent lights hummed faintly overhead. The air smelled of coffee and fried bacon. It was a haven for travelers, for truckers, for those running from something, or toward it. Behind the counter, Emily Carter, 23 years old, moved like someone carrying invisible weights on her shoulders. Her blonde hair, tied back in a messy ponytail, had escaped in strands that brushed her tired face. Her apron was worn, the edges stained from too many double shifts. But her eyes, though dulled with exhaustion, still carried a softness that refused to die. She smiled when she served, even if it hurt to keep it up. She listened to customers' small talk, even when her mind screamed of unpaid bills and a father coughing blood into his handkerchief back home. Her little sister, Lucy, only 12, waited every night for Emily to come back, clinging to her homework in the dim light of their rundown apartment. Emily wasn't just a waitress. She was a caretaker, a provider, a fighter. And yet, no matter how strong she tried to be, there were nights when the world seemed determined to break her. This was one of those nights. Before we continue, if stories of courage and kindness inspire you, please take a second to like this video, share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe to Kindness Universe. Your support helps us keep bringing these stories to life. The bell above the door jingled sharply. Emily looked up, forcing her usual greeting smile. But the second she saw who walked in, her gut clenched. 3 men, loud, rough around the edges, their clothes soaked from rain, their eyes bloodshot from alcohol. They staggered slightly as they moved, but their swagger carried menace. They weren't here for food. They weren't here for coffee. They were here to prove something, at whose expense didn't matter. The tallest of them, with a scar running from his temple to his jaw, scanned the diner like he owned it. His companions trailed behind, snickering, one of them already lighting a cigarette despite the no smoking sign. They took a booth in the middle of the diner, kicking their boots on the table. The scarred man snapped his fingers at Emily, loud and demeaning. "Coffee. 3 cups, and make it quick, sweetheart." Emily swallowed the lump in her throat and grabbed the pot. She poured, keeping her hands steady though her heart raced. She could feel their eyes crawling over her like she was something to be hunted. "You're a pretty little thing, ain't ya?" One of them slurred, leaning forward, his grin full of malice. "Bet you get lonely working nights out here." Emily kept her voice calm. "I'm just doing my job, sir." "Sir," he mocked, laughing. "Hear that, boys? She's got manners. Maybe we should teach her a different kind." The others laughed, and Emily's face burned with humiliation. She retreated to the counter, but they weren't done. Every time she passed, their comments got louder, cruder. One brushed his hand against hers when she set down a plate, making her flinch. The other whistled loudly every time she bent to pick something up. The other customers stared into their plates, silent, pretending not to see. That was the way of things in places like this. People didn't get involved. Emily's throat tightened. She thought of Lucy, waiting for her at home, and prayed silently for the clock to move faster. Then, the bell jingled again. The storm outside hadn't let up, and the door blew open with the wind. Heavy boots struck the floor in rhythm, like the sound of thunder contained in men. 5 of them walked in together, leather jackets soaked, the patches of their motorcycle club glistening under the harsh lights. Bikers. The air shifted. They weren't just men, they were presence. Broad shoulders, scarred faces, hands calloused from years on the road. They carried themselves with the confidence of survivors, the kind of men who had seen darkness and didn't flinch from it. The scarred thug smirked at the sight. Well, looks like the freak show rolled in. But Emily saw something different. The biker's eyes swept the room, sharp, assessing. And then one of them, an older man with a gray beard and eyes like steel, noticed her trembling hands. Their gazes locked for a moment, and she felt safe. The bikers walked to the counter. One ordered coffee in a voice deep and steady. Then, slowly, the gray-bearded man turned toward the thugs. "You boys having fun?" he asked calmly. The diner stilled. "Just talking to the lady," the scarred thug said, leaning back. "Ain't that right, sweetheart?" He winked at Emily, making her shrink back. The biker's eyes darkened. He stepped closer. "Didn't sound like talking to me. Sounded like disrespect." The thug laughed, but it was shaky now. "Why don't you mind your business, old man? She's just a waitress." The biker's jaw tightened. "She's not just anything. She's a person. And right now, she's under our protection." The silence was suffocating. Even the jukebox seemed to cut off mid-song. The scarred thug pushed back his chair, trying to look brave. But before he could rise, another biker stepped forward, towering, arms folded across his chest. "You really want to do this?" he asked in a low growl. The thugs froze. They were loud when they thought no one would stop them. But standing in front of these men who radiated strength like an unshakable wall, they faltered. The scarred one spat on the floor, his bravado crumbling. "This dump ain't worth it anyway." He shoved past, storming out. The others followed quickly, muttering curses that sounded hollow now. The bell jingled as they left. Emily's knees gave out slightly, her hand gripping the counter for balance. She blinked hard, trying to hold back the tears threatening to spill. The gray-bearded biker turned to her, his expression softening. "You all right, miss?" Her voice cracked. "Yes, I think so." "You don't gotta thank us," he said gently. "No one deserves to be treated like that." Emily nodded, tears slipping down her cheeks despite her efforts. The bikers sat down at a booth. "We'll take pie," the gray-bearded one said, almost like nothing had happened. "All of us." Emily gave a shaky laugh and hurried to serve them. For the first time that night, her hands weren't trembling from fear, but from gratitude. They stayed for a while, chatting casually, making jokes that filled the diner with a warmth Emily hadn't felt in months. They didn't bring up the incident again. They didn't need to. Their presence was enough. When they finally left, the gray-bearded man placed a folded bill under his cup. "Take care of yourself, Emily," he said softly. And then they were gone. The roar of their motorcycles thundered into the storm, fading into the distance. Emily picked up the bill. It was more money than she made in a week. Her hand covered her mouth as tears blurred her vision. That night, something changed. She realized kindness doesn't always come soft and gentle. Sometimes it comes fierce, strong, and unshakable. Sometimes, kindness looks like men in leather jackets standing tall against cruelty. And from that night on, Emily walked with a little more strength, knowing she wasn't invisible. Knowing that even in the darkest nights, kindness could roar in on two wheels and leave behind a spark that could never be extinguished. Before the final message of this story, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to Kindness Universe, and share it with someone who believes in standing up for what's right. Together we spread the purpose of kindness. Because kindness isn't weakness, it's courage, and the bravest thing any of us can do is to stand up for someone who can't. And in that small, forgotten diner, on a stormy night, kindness arrived when Emily needed it most, and left her with hope she would carry forever.